Chemistry Room Fragrances is the perfect addition when elevating the vibe of any space. Whether if it's your home, car, or office, and something needs a quick refresh, our room fragrances provide that beautiful burst of fragrance with just one quick mist. Shop now at www.chemistryroomfragrances.com and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Chemistry Room Fragrances. Chemistry Room Fragrances. Smells so good. Hey, Antwan.
Hey,
How you doing?
I'm good.
That's good. I'm so excited to have you back on the show. We're going to go ahead and get everything kicked off. Hey, everybody. What's up? It's Camille as the host of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe and follow me right now. I'm on Instagram at Camille.Essig. We also have our merchandise available. Now that spring is officially here, Good Black Men, we have merchandise available in our flagship t-shirts in various colors. You can go right now to our website at gbmofficial.com and be sure to follow me on Instagram there at gbmofficial. We're there at Good Black Men Official on Instagram. And be sure to shop with me at Chemistry Room Fragrances. You use the coupon code GBM15. That way you can save 15% at the checkout. Our new spring fragrance for spring and summer is here. It's called Island Kiss. Trust me, you will absolutely love it. It smells so amazing. And I also have my merchandise on my Amazon storefront as well as digital products on my Etsy store. And with that being said, our friend and family to the show, Antwan Aiken, is here. Antwan, for those that have never seen you before or are familiar with you, kind of let the viewers know who you are and what you do.
Yes, so it's always good to be back. I always say that it's good to be back at home because that's what it feels like. So my name is Antwan Aiken. Professionally, I am a licensed psychotherapist, but I'm also an entrepreneur in the restaurant industry, and I have a nonprofit called the Aiken Foundation.
Yes, we absolutely love the Aiken Foundation. And what is the Aiken Foundation? The premise of the foundation?
So the purpose of the Aiken Foundation is to really fill a void and provide resources and support in minority communities. So we do that a lot by fundraising and then pouring those monies right back into communities that otherwise would be passed over for funding opportunities.
I love it. And you do target particularly Black and Brown students, correct?
Black and brown is our target, people that look like us.
I love it. And you've also made donations to HBCUs as like Morris Brown, correct?
Correct. Right. So we have the Aiken Foundation Student Access Fund, where we provide financial assistance to students seeking post-secondary education. So Morris Brown College was one of those universities, and there also is a job training program that we've done some work with called HR Certified, which provides a credential for those individuals in the HR field, and we paid for their tuition and their testing fees.
I love it. And at the end, I also want viewers and listeners to know if they would like to donate to the foundation. We're going to give the information again at the end of this conversation because I really love that foundation and what it stands for. And I want others, if they feel in their heart to do so, to have the opportunity to give to the Aiken Foundation.
Yes.
So we're going to hop right into the conversation. Um, anytime you're here, we're always discussing Black men and mental health, particularly with depression and isolation. And I had a thought throughout the week preparing for the show as far as how Black men deal with depression and isolation. And there's a difference between how, and correct me if I'm wrong, as far as how men feel the emotion and then versus how they express it. Is that correct? Like, what is the difference in that?
Yeah, so I think that we all can feel an emotion. I think when something happens, let's just say there's a death that occurs, we all can feel that sadness, but then how we actually grieve is different, and that's where that self-expression comes in at.
Hmm.
So I think we all naturally will feel certain things, but then we can kind of choose in some ways how we want to express that, or if we want to express it at all.
Okay. And then in terms of that, um, men seem to kind of go inward or shut down or check out and not really open up and discuss it just because just when you see on social media, women are more likely to communicate how they feel, like, hey girl, this is how I feel today, versus you kind of notice men like, how you doing? Oh man, I'm good or whatever, or I'm all right, or they just get very quiet. So can you kind of break down probably what's going on in that phase of just shutting down and not expressing? And then part two of that is in that escape, where are men going?
Yeah, I think just even in my own experience as a black male, I don't think that we have been given the foundation to really express those emotions. So when we get to adulthood and when we're in 2023 and everybody is like, express, talk about how you feel,
Mm,
it's very foreign. That's just an opportunity that I think a lot of men, particularly black men, haven't been given a strong foundation for. And then when we do express ourselves, sometimes that's not very well received. And sometimes we're accused of, cop out, or we may be accused of making excuses when we're just expressing how we feel about a situation.
I totally agree with that. I look at it as far as it just seems like the push to constantly have to humanize our black men and boys. For example, when you look at Tyree Nichols, it was almost like we had to prove like this man had mental health, he was innocent, or showing like, hey, like he didn't deserve this. But in any other case, oh, they had a bad day or whatever. But it's like there's always examples or push to humanize our black men and boys to say, hey, it's okay for you to have feelings. It's okay if you have a bad day. It's okay for you to express your feelings. But when we see black men express themselves, as you stated, you're ostracized or your orientation, air quotes, get attacked, and
Mhm.
or your masculinity is questioned. And
Right.
before orientation or any of that, you're a human being with feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of those things where it's like, if I don't express, I'm criticized, and then if I do express, I'm criticized from a whole different angle.
Yeah.
But I think that we know, and especially in 2023, not even as a therapist, just in general, we know the benefit of opening up. And we
Mm.
have seen throughout the pandemic some of the really horrible outcomes of people that really don't open up about how they feel and what they're going through. And some of those outcomes are things that, if nothing else, it's gotten my attention to check in with my friends and make sure
Mm.
that everybody's okay.
And what does that look like as far as checking in versus checking out, and creating a circle or an environment for black men to feel safe where they can emotionally land safety without being attacked or ridiculed?
I think that sometimes it's the role assignment. I think that if I present in a certain scenario as a strong black male that has it all together, there's an assumption that I have it all together and that I don't need to talk about anything, or that I'm fine. I think kind of dispelling that and seeing me as a human first and not kind of what I come to the table with is going to be that first step. It's just that simple check in. How is everything going with you? I know that you have a lot going on. How are you managing that? It's not, at least in my friend circles, we don't ask those specific targeted questions. questions. We may ask very generalized questions, but we're not asking a lot of those specific questions. So we may be missing an opportunity to really connect with the person that may be struggling and not expressing how they really feel.
So how do men make other men feel comfortable enough to ask those targeted questions without it being like, dude, you're being weird or awkward, or just feeling comfortable enough to kind of let the guard down just a little bit more to kind of get closer or inside that mindset to say, hey, what's really going on with you? Are you okay?
I think that it's hard, but I honestly think that it takes that one brave person to create that circle of trust. It really takes that one person to normalize, like, hey, y'all, I want to talk about what I'm going through. This is how I feel. This is some of the thoughts that I've been having. And then when that one person shares, that essentially gives that group or that social circle some social permission to also share, like, hey, I was going through that same thing a month ago. This is what I did to get through that, or this is how I was feeling. So I think that we build community by seeing people in our community do the things that we then will identify as, okay, that is normal, that is what is supposed to be done.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. Jeremy just hopped in. Jeremy, thank you for joining us, as well as Elton Williamson. That's my cousin. Hey, Elton. So we're here with Antwan Aiken, and we're discussing Black men and mental health. And I'm here with Antwan Aiken. So, Antwan, going further into this conversation, when men check out, what does that look like? Because it's, to me, from the woman's perspective, it just seems like men tend to dig deeper into working or
Mm.
deeper into education to kind of know or cope, or it's like a coping mechanism, like, oh, instead of really taking the time to sit down with myself, maybe it's a fear of being emotionally vulnerable and hearing your own thoughts, digging deeper into work and working more hours or taking on another project.
I think that when you look even in a traditional sense, that women really create a lot of identity around the family that they create,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes biologically, but sometimes just kind of the social family that they create. And then I think that men, just even historically, have really been defined based on their professional success and kind of the name that they're able to make for themselves. So I think that that's an easy distraction. It's easy for me to keep working and to keep striving to meet certain goals instead of really dealing with some of the things that I'm going through, because work provides an outlet. Work
Mm-hmm.
provides an escape. It provides a distraction from what I'm really going through. And when I'm at work, I can be on top of the world. Nobody knows what I'm going through. I'm high achieving at work, but then when I'm not at work, I can really be struggling.
Isn't that kind of dangerous at some point? And maybe I'm being extreme, but isn't the other end of that spectrum, doesn't that look like depression and suicide at some point if the pressure's too much?
I think it definitely can, especially if that individual doesn't have that strong support system that they can really go to and depend on and decompress with. I think those are some of the negative outcomes that you see.
Mm-hmm. So going into that space, how how do you get a man, particularly a black man, to say, hey, maybe I need to get help or counseling or therapy? Just because, again, we're here knocking down these taboos um, and the misinformation about black men and mental health. So how do you even reach someone that may say, oh no, I'm fine, or they're kind of resistant to that idea?
I think by first identifying who is the best messenger to get that person to to have the conversation with that person, because not everybody is going to be the best messenger. It's going to depend on the relationship, the closeness, all of those are going to be factors. So I think once you identify who is that best person to at least start that conversation, that can then be half of the battle.
And that one of the key factors that I think, to me, and maybe I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Antwan, trust. Like, whether you're a man or a woman, trust is imperative, because no one's going to open up to anybody if you don't feel safe, comfortable, or if you don't trust the other person.
Yeah, I think trust is important, and I think trust also goes with vulnerability. that in order for me to feel vulnerable, there has to be a foundation laid to where I feel like that vulnerability will be secure and that it will be comforting and that it won't be abused. And I think that you build vulnerability when you build community. So if I have a circle or a social circle or a group, and one person shares an experience that they had, now I feel more comfortable sharing my experience. And then somebody else may feel empowered to share their experience. Now we've built a sense of vulnerability amongst a group that can make it easy for us to share other things in the future because that vulnerability has already been established.
That's really good, Antoine. I do like that. So, from your professional perspective, what are some things that our brothers can do just on a day to day basis as far as self care?
I definitely think things like, of course, working out, that's kind of my thing. But I always encourage people, what are the things that really take you out of your element and take you into a place where you're not stressed, where you're not dealing with depression, where you're not dealing with anxiety? That's really different for everybody. For me, working out is how I decompress. That is how I um, kind of forget about my problems in that moment. Not necessarily forget about my problems, because when we forget about our problems, we suppress them. But just finding things that you can do to decompress. So, what are some things that you're interested in that has nothing to do with work? Or some things that you're interested in that are outside of the home, and really exploring with that person, what are these things and how can we get access to them so that you can engage in those activities. I think when you don't have that opportunity to decompress and you just go and go and go, I think that that is when things can really get to a dangerous place.
Wow. And in that, what is the, how can I word this? The impact of avoidance or isolation? Because on one extremity, you have depression and suicide, and then on the low end, which we would scale like 1 to 10 to zero. But when they're in that gray area, what is happening there? Like, what does that look like? What are signs or things that people can look for?
Well, the first thing that I will say is I think that everybody is different. We all have different defense mechanisms that we have built up to deal with challenging situations. So, me and you, or me and another black male, could experience the same situation, but how we think about that situation, how we respond to it, can be totally different. So, that is going to have an impact, and that can be related to our upbringing, kind of the environment that we live in. There's a lot of factors that can impact that. So I think that that's how you'll see that extreme. Some people that that isolation may produce things like depression or suicidality, but then I think you'll have some people that that isolation, although it may be unhealthy, there's not necessarily a negative consequence in the same way as somebody that may have depression or suicidality. They may get their energy or they may get their source of comfort from something different. Maybe being around people isn't where they get their source of comfort from, but maybe they have a really strict workout regimen or they have a hobby that they engage in, and despite the fact that they're not opening up about how they feel, they have an outlet to express some of that frustration and anger and anxiety and depression. So I think that it's going to be that assessment of that individual to see what is it that can help you. And anytime that I'm working with clients, black males, but anyone, I'm always trying to assess what are some things that you're interested in before you got to the place that you are now, because oftentimes by the time I see somebody, they're already in a place that they don't want to be. What were the things you used to do that would make you happy?
That's good. Um, One of the things I learned from my therapist that she taught me was learning to listen to my body. And like today, I'll share with you with some things offline regarding my week. And so coming in today after work, before we had the show, I was just tired. Like as soon as I walked in the door, I felt it. I was like, "Oh, I'm tired." I didn't turn on my television. I'm very big on aromatherapy, hence chemistry room fragrances. So I just took a moment, quiet, no TV, no music, I have my LED lighting just because it calms me down. And I set my timer just to let my mind rest. And I took a nap because I didn't want to think about anything. It was quiet, just very settled. And just I listened to my breathing and closed my eyes. And I let myself just decompress from my day before I just come home and hop on my phone and start doing things. And just um, being kinder to my body and my mind, just saying, hey, you had a full day. You've had a long week. I deserve. I owe myself 30 to 45 minutes.
Right.
Just to, it's like a phone. Just plug in and recharge and reset.
And think about how many people don't do that, or think about people that they do that once they've had some negative consequence that has forced them to do that.
Mhm.
I think that that's really good. It's funny because we didn't have this conversation before, but literally I had the same experience. Um, just kind of had a day and got home and did the same thing, didn't watch anything, like literally did the same thing. And I think that we have to normalize that. I think that there's in our society we promote always being on. There's a lot of jobs that require you to be on call. Sometimes friends socially require you to be on call, or family. Like we always, there's not a lot of opportunities for us to totally disconnect without feeling like we're neglecting something or someone. And I think that there can be some very negative consequences of always being on 100% of the time and not allowing yourself to refuel.
Yeah, I think that's good. And with tiredness, and like you said, not that anything happened. It's just I just needed a moment to reset. And when you don't give your body that, you become more short tempered. Your attention span is off. Um, you may start a task and then a full task because your mind is thinking about everything. Because we live in a society now where everything is multitasking, no days off. Like you said, always on. And so now I just have guidelines for myself. Like, unless I'm podcasting by 8:30, put my phone on do not disturb. I have my teas that I drink at night. There's just a routine that I've set for myself, saying, "Hey, Camille, at this time, hey, let's start winding it down. Let's start letting yourself decompress." So there's certain things I interject into my daily routine that's now part of my lifestyle. And when I miss that, I can tell the difference. And I'm like, hey, tonight you're doing this, you're doing that, because you need it. You're taking on so much throughout the day, not just women, but men too. And it's like the importance. Can you kind of touch on the importance on, like you said, setting a routine to say, hey, this is my time, even in the morning, to before I start my day, to kind of gather my thoughts and kind of center myself.
Yeah, I think it is very important to identify a self care routine that you do on a consistent basis. And the thing about it is, your self care routine should never feel like homework. Because if it feels like homework, then that's exactly what you're trying to run away from. You're trying to get away from whatever feels like homework or whatever feels like work. Your self care routine should be something that is enjoyable, something that's very easy for you to do, something that you like doing, something that you have easy access to. I think everybody should have a self care routine.
That's really good. And so maybe, and this is just a random thought I just had, when someone's in a friendship or even a relationship and you're not getting that care that you feel like that other person should be giving to you, then you get frustrated. But I'm thinking, should you not have these things within yourself? So even if you don't get that from the other person, it's coming from you, right?
So, what's coming from you?
Like the self-care, because I
No.
sometimes I think people get frustrated because they want this type of care or treatment or love, but it's like, but did you even attempt to give that to yourself first before looking for it externally?
Yes, self care is a internal process.
Hmm.
There may be aspects of self care that can involve other people. So for me, and you kind of notice, I like to go out. That's a form of self care for me.
And do
I like to be out and about, but that is still my self care, and nobody else is in charge of that. Even though other people may be a part of that and they may contribute to that, I
Mhm.
am ultimately the one in charge of ensuring that that happens, and I'm in charge of that process.
That's really good. I like that. Antoine, just as we start to wrap up, this conversation. Um, and you've been in the field for so long. What are some of the biggest things you've noticed as far as triggering Black men out here, as far as in today's society, with just dealing with stress?
So long, you make me feel old.
No, I mean you are a guru in the field. You're licensed. I'm not. So I respect your perspective.
I think a lot of the things that are triggering are, I think there is a social construct of what it means to be a black man in America.
Hmm.
And I think that anytime a black male goes outside that mold that has been created, we didn't create it, we didn't ask to be a part of it. It was a mold that was created for us, and we have just kind of fallen into it as a member of society. But I think that anytime we try to go outside that mold, is when a lot of stress, anxiety, and tension is created. So part of that mold, there's a societal perception that, black males will achieve this in life and won't achieve that in life. And then you got things like incarceration rate and educational attainment. All of those are social things that have been put onto us. We didn't choose, are we more likely to do this or that? These are just social constructs that's been put onto us. And I think that there's a lot of stress and anxiety sometimes when I don't want to fall into that mold. I don't want to be incarcerated. I don't want to have low education. I don't want to do all of these things. I want to go against the mold that has been created for black males. And I think that when we do go against that, that can really create a lot of stress and anxiety for us and for the people around us.
Hmm. And so we're always talking about forgiveness. So what can brothers do once they come into what I call the light of understanding that they've had some self neglect, self care, and one forgiving themselves for not doing it sooner, but number two, dealing with that little boy inside, trying to process all of these constructs you're telling us about. What does that process look like the forgiving process, so they can say, hey, even though I didn't do it 10 years ago, hey, I'm doing it now.
I think that that part is hard. I think that that's really going to require some self awareness. So I think
Mhm.
that individual is really going to have to be self aware of, this is who I am, this is what I've been through, and this is how it has negatively impacted me and the people around me that I
Mhm.
care about. And then using that information to then come up with what are some changes that I want to make so that I'm functioning at a better level than I currently am. I think that that lack of self awareness is going to be crippling, because a lot of times when people lack self awareness, they're the last ones to know. They
Yep.
think that they're so self aware and they're really not self aware. They're only self aware about the things that impact them, but not self aware of how their behaviors impact so many people around them, people that they purport to care about.
That's good. So as we begin to wrap up, Antoine, are there any like takeaways or nuggets that you would like to leave with the listeners and viewers, and then also where people can contact you on social media if they would like to book with you?
Yes, so I think that one of the things that I would say, I love how there's a lot of conversation that's occurring about mental health. I think that that's always a positive thing, even if people are using it in the wrong context, or even if people have uh, context about mental health. Just the fact that people are talking about mental health is a very positive thing. One of the things that I always encourage people to do, and I try to do this as a friend, is just checking in with people, not waiting until something bad has happened or until that life event has occurred, but just periodically checking in with people to see how people are doing. You never know the impact that something like that can have until you are then in that situation and somebody does it to you. So I would just encourage people to do that. In terms of keeping in touch with me, I can be found on Instagram at AG Aiken. And also my nonprofit can be found at the Aiken Foundation.
I love it. Antoine, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a joy to have you here. I always appreciate your perspective your personal and your professional perspective. And again, I love what you're doing there in Atlanta as far as representing for our brothers. I think seeing a Black therapist is so important just because we see such a push for, our brothers to either be an athlete or in music. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just to say, hey, there's other things you can do that can make waves that ripple far beyond a microphone or football or something. So I think it's important to have your face here just so they can see it as a career option, because we need more brothers in the field of mental health and counseling. I think men are more comfortable to open up and talk if they see someone that looks like them and they can relate to. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me in my audience.
Thank you for having me, as always.
You're welcome. Well, everybody, this is Camille as the host of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at camille.essick and shop with me with the Good Black Man merchandise and the Chemistry Room Fragrance brand there on Instagram. And until next time, everyone, be blessed. Have a safe weekend. Bye. Thank you, Antwan.
Thank you.